I've never actually done this. I've never actually gone through and done a map tier list, so I think it'd be useful to just have in general and be able to reference back to and probably snippet clip it so that people, whenever they ask, like, what maps do you prefer? Stuff like that, it would be a lot easier to answer the question. Okay, so I'll start off at the top. We're just going to go alphabetical order and how the maps appear. Some of these maps are not going to really apply, so that's why I have the NU not. Isn't NU like not applicable or something? I don't remember, but basically, if it doesn't apply because there may not be a helicopter, then I'm going to throw it down there. But if it does apply, then I'll rank it in the S, A, B, C, D. So starting off, Azagor. I've only done tier lists once before. It was with coworkers ranking breakfast cereals. Hey, it's a good tier list. Starting off is Azagor, Infantry Conquest. So Azagor Infantry Conquest specifically, I think is a S tier map. Because Azagor is a tiny map, and because of it, it allows you to drop off people on good hot points. There's not a lot of elevation, so not a lot of clearing that people have to do. Generally speaking, they only have to clear a couple buildings. I think it's like B point, maybe. I don't remember off the dome, but there's a point that has large construction buildings on one half of the map that does require some clearing, but it's not nearly as much as some other maps or some other situations. Hold on, I can also scoot this over a little bit. I think it's kind of obvious. Okay. So, because of the map's tiny size and because of the map having not a lot of clearing that you have to make or not a lot of points that you have to clear, it leads to really high potential point games as a transport pilot. Now, there technically is a helicopter that is on Azagor, but is on the Conquest version of Azagor, there's only a armed little bird. So for me, technically, um, Azagor Conquest, I put in the more like not applicable stage. Because there's only the armed helicopter. So yes, technically you could be using that to transport people, but it doesn't work very well. It's just kind of awkward. Next up, Basra. Basra is reworked, so it's changed now. In terms of new Basra, so Basra on Conquest won't be down here. Yeah, it would be funny, but I think it's just too difficult. They wouldn't. I think it's just too hard because it's too hard because it's hard. You have one seat, so people have to hop in instantly, get on the rope, and getting that consistency is going to be difficult. Basra Conquest. I just played on it today, so I just reminded myself there's no. And as a side note, this tier list is. I'm not going to talk about invasion. I'm going to leave that alone for right now. This is just going to be for conquest and infantry conquest because those are the more popular game modes, and invasion's not as popular. Yeah, you would need team coordination to make the attack bird only work. So, conquest version of Basra currently only has the Black Hawk helicopters and has Little Bird helicopter armed Little Bird helicopters. Unless I really missed it today. Personally, I'm not a big fan of just Black Hawk only maps, which is why I usually rank them or put them pretty low. Because Black Hawk to me is just a little bit significantly weaker and easier to shoot down than the unarmed Little Bird. Yes, the Black Hawk does have more health and can tank some shots, but the rotor is very easy to hit down, and a lot of people who are skilled at taking out rotors can do a really good job. So, Conquest is there. Infantry Conquest Again, to my memory, it does have the unarmed little birds it throws on there. I think it removes the attack little birds. I could be wrong. I haven't really played this one that much. But to my memory, I would put it as a C. Again, if I get a little bird, that instantly is going to probably move a map up a little bit. But the new Basra is a little bit more spread out. It's not as condensed as the old one. The old one used to be very condensed because everyone was just basically at the ship. The new Basra is a little more spread out, so it's not as condensed as it used to be. It's a little bit harder to get big points or big rack up points. Yeah, Blackhawks are kind of sitting ducks unless like you said, Oliphant, you gotta have a really big crew of dedicated people, and even then, the best Blackhawk games I've gotten are literally like a third the score of the best Little Bird games. Construction is not applicable. Construction only has tanks, I think, on Conquest, and has just transport vehicles, so it doesn't apply. District, for me, both Conquest and Infantry Conquest, it does not matter. District, for me, is an S tier map. Doesn't matter. Now, the thing is, new district in particular is what I'm talking about.
Get to the chopper!
Cat People 9001, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the flight school, Cat People. Sorry, I'm doing a tier list of the maps right now. I've never actually done this, so I figured it'd be kind of useful because I've talked about doing it. I've just never actually gone through with it. Hope you're doing well. If you'd like, you can add me as a friend on Steam, and you can also join my Discord. So both the mild downside of the Conquest version is that you will have armed little birds that you have to face, but the map itself is just very well made for transport piloting. Today I had very good games on a very good game on District, where a lot of people are piling on the ropes, and District is the reason that gets to happen, because the map, the way it is made, it is very, very, very difficult for people to see you, even if you're just a few like 100 meters away, because the map is very foggy and heavy it's very visually heavy to see far, so it means your helicopter is almost invisible while you're like picking up people. So you can do, unlike a lot of maps, you can uniquely do really super big massive pickups and be relatively safe compared to a lot of other maps. So that's why for me that's like a super high S tier map, regardless of being Conquest or Infantry Conquest. It's become more of my favorite. Azagor just has more interesting fights because the map is just a little bit smaller and more condensed, so you get to do just a lot quicker drop-offs than District. District just has some cooler, fun, big pickups. So that's why I probably would put Azagor just a smidge ahead of District. But Azagor Infantry Conquest is a rare gem. It doesn't happen all the time. Dusty Dew used to not apply, but now it does. Again, my memory could be off, but to my knowledge, Dusty on Conquest and Infantry Conquest is pretty much the same, I believe. I could be wrong. I haven't had a whole ton of like time to play on the map, honestly, and I'm not sitting there trying to memorize exactly what it has. Repetition helps me memorize, but I believe on Conquest there's a little bird and an armed bird. I think on Infantry Conquest there's just transport birds. I could be wrong. There may be an armed one though. Every once in a blue moon I could swear there's an armed one sometimes on the Infantry Conquest. But new Dusty Dew it's fine in terms of, it's kind of the same for me in terms of Infantry Conquest and Conquest. We're going down to Dusty Dew. Okay, we're gonna go on down to Dusty Dew. Get ourselves some kills or some transportation scores. So, Dusty is pretty fun. The biggest problem that Dusty suffers from is the map is kind of big and long. So because of that, what happens is that sometimes people don't see your helicopter. It like doesn't appear on the map because the map's just so big. Um, so it just limits sometimes the amount of times people get into the helicopter. But again, kind of similar to District, Dusty has a lot of points or and Azagor. Dusty has a lot of hot spots that don't really have a lot of elevation to clear. There's just a couple of buildings, or most of the hot location is one elevation or just 1 to 2 elevations. So that's why I kind of rank it as B. The dropping can be good, but the problem is you have to get people consistently in the helicopter, which can be difficult sometimes because of the way the map is set up. Eduardovo, ironically, one of the times transfer early would be most useful. Yeah, that's the biggest problem. Is sometimes it's most useful when they least see it. Eduardovo is pretty fun, but it has to pretty much be infantry conquest. Technically, on conquest there is it's sad. That's when it would be most. Yep, exactly, cat people. Exactly. Because the maps are so big and people are just running sometimes from the base, and it's like they're taking forever. If they just spawn in the heli, they would save time. Or they're just waiting for their team forever, and it's like they could spawn in the heli quicker and go somewhere. And I try my best to fly in like people's visuals, but literally because of the way that the map is set up, sometimes you straight up can't see the pilot or the helicopter unless I'm flying over points. And then when flying over points, it just increases your odds or risk of dying to some random RPG from elsewhere. That's good to see you, cat people. Thank you for driving by. So, Eduardovo Conquest pretty much only has the Blackhawk. It has armed little birds, and then, like I said, it has one news chopper that I believe spawns at Charlie Point. So the Conquest variant, I put it kind of low. Infantry Conquest, again, the map kind of has the potential to be really fun. It does suffer from that big size issue that I talked about, where it's like sometimes the map is just too big, and sometimes the map is too big and people just can't see you. It does have fun points to drop off on, and again, not a lot of elevation, but kind of that the large map size is holding it back because people just don't see you as much. Again, I've said this before. If there was a way for people to spawn in the helicopter, like there's a big button that says, here's a tank that's available, there's a tank available, there's a helicopter available, spawn in one of them. I really feel like that would massively increase the usage of the vehicles and also would make them more useful, and in general would drive and make people want to become pilots more. Because right now, for some people, for me, for many months, it's you're sitting in spawn or you're waiting above points or you're waiting for people to get in. You just become a bummer. So that would just help it progress a lot more. So, Eduardovo, kind of a C map, but it is definitely better than Basra for me. Basra and Infantry Conquest still kind of suffers from the big, too large problem, and it's too spread out. Infantry Conquest at Eduardovo can be kind of fun and have its maps. Yeah, it would be nice if we had some like a spawn bar. Like literally you click on something and you can spawn into it and you don't even have to find it on the map, you just spawn into it. Frugus. For me, Conquest especially. Conquest only has the Blackhawk. So again, this is going to be a pretty low rank one. And on top of that, Frugus is especially meh because there's only one helicopter that will spawn on the whole map. So it's just really low odds that you actually get it. Pretty low chance that you have success of getting in the helicopter. Infantry Conquest on Frugus is very similarly suffering from problems like I mentioned. It's just one helicopter. There's a bunch of people. Yeah, maybe. I feel like maybe one helicopter on each side wouldn't be the worst thing, and then you have the big one that people fight over. Because frigates just have so many roofs. But regardless, there's just the one heli. It just makes it tough. It's really, really hard to get in it. Sometimes you can have really good games, but it's just not. It's just too inconsistent. It's too hard to get in it. Infantry Conquest is still more fun for me than normal Conquest because you get the little bird, but again, some of that suffering. Okay, Isle. Isle for Infantry Conquest. I believe Isle Infantry Conquest only has little birds. I don't think it has Blackhawks. So Isle, again, is one of the maps that suffers from size issues. It's very large, but Isle has the benefit and similarities to District, where District has the heavy fog that blocks your vision, makes it so you can do pickups. Isle kind of benefits from that as well. It can be very foggy and very hard to see things from far away. So it can kind of help, and the way the map is set up, it can kind of sometimes. It's not as foggy as District, just sometimes it can be a little foggy. So that can kind of help, and the way the map is set up, sometimes it's hard for people to see, so it helps out a little bit. And in terms of drop-off location, there's one really fun point, which is, I think it's Charlie. It's just that big, giant middle building. Dropping people on that top of that point is usually a pretty consistent like meat grinder. One thing though, there's a bunch of helis, which is kind of a pro, because if you die in one, you probably will get another one. But the con of that is sometimes when there's too many helis, just no one's spawning in the heli consistently, or it's hard for people to find you consistently. Again, not sound like a broken record, but the Conquest version is usually just going to slide down a little bit more if they only have Blackhawks. Because again, you can still fly, but it's just not as fun, in my opinion. Lenovo, for me, I would put in an S tier if it's Conquest or Infantry Conquest. And that's because Lenovo has one of the largest benefits in the game, and that is it is one of the smallest maps in terms of its what's the word? Like in terms of how condensed the screen is when you open up your map. It's just very tight. So literally default, people usually just see your helicopter flying around at home base. Usually you want to fly around in home base because you have a shield protection. If it says, what does it say? I think it says like, it says something at the top of your screen. I don't remember. But if it says something like in the middle of your screen, you basically are shield protected. You can't be hurt. So that's the most ideal because you're invincible. So if you can be in home base and you can be invincible, then that's the best way to pick up people because then you can go safely bring them somewhere. Lenovo also, because it's kind of tiny and condensed, allows for really quick drop-offs and has some really cool hotspots. Personally, while I've been playing more, I used it. I'll show you hard degree. Nice. Appreciate it. I've been enjoying District because of the hot pickups more. Lenovo is going to have more consistent, like you'll just have people spawning in your helicopter. So they're very, very close to me. Conquest Lenovo also has something very fun that you cannot do on District, really. The fun thing you can do with Conquest Lenovo is that you can actually do rocket helis, where you are going around. You have like a RPG crew of people. There's so many vehicles on Lenovo, and they funnel out in the most obvious ways, and they're so easy to see. So it's just very easy to go around and just RPG a bunch of vehicles. I actually have a clip where I killed, I think it was like 2 helicopters and like 2 tanks and 1 Humvee in like 30 seconds or something like that. It was something crazy. But it was just like a lot of things dying really quick, back to back. So, you know, you can just get some of those situations. So they're both kind of fun for their own reasons. Infantry Conquest is more fun because there's 2 little birds, and you get to transport. The Conquest version, you get to do RPG helis potentially. But regardless, it's all around, to me, a very, very, very good map. Multi Islands. If I'm remembering correctly, Multi Islands does not have a spawn for the little bird in base. And I almost want to say on Infantry Conquest, Multi Islands also has the Blackhawk still. For me, Multi Islands is a pretty low ranking map on both Conquest and Infantry Conquest. Because, one, on the Infantry Conquest, I'm almost positive that it doesn't have the little birds replace the Blackhawk. You may get a little bird instead of the armed ones, but I don't remember exactly. It doesn't happen that often. It's pretty rare. But the biggest thing for me is the little bird that you do get. One, unless it's been changed, to my knowledge, it still works this way. The team that's on the northern half of the map, they get a little bird that's the 8-passenger little bird. The team that's on the southern half of the map, they get a little bird, but for some reason it's the newscast little bird, which is like a 2-person little bird. So it's not in your spawn, it's off map, so it means it relies on you taking over a point. So you basically have to take over a point, and if you don't take over the point successfully, then you're not going to get a bird for a while. So it just takes it away. That's why I rank it pretty low for me personally. The mock is not applicable. The mock does not have helicopters. New and old neither have helicopters, so not applicable. Same thing with Oil Dunes. Oil Dunes would literally be one of my most favorite Rocket Heli maps of all time because there's like 1 trillion tanks, but no helicopters. There's no picture for Outskirts. Hold on. That's not Outskirts. None of these are looking like Outskirts. Okay, I'm gonna have to scuffily write Outskirts somewhere. So Oil Dune's not applicable. Outskirts actually is pretty fun. Outskirts is a pretty fun map. Outskirts is fun for a different weird reason. So for Infantry Conquest, Outskirts, I'm just gonna write out. So for Infantry Conquest Outskirts, I actually would put it pretty high. For one weirdly unique reason, Outskirts is like the best map to run people over. You can just run people over very easily on Outskirts compared to other maps, and it's just kind of because of the way that there's a lot of roof battles and the roofs have a lot of fake cover on them that you can just run through pretty easily. So I've killed so many people on Outskirts compared to other maps. In terms of just a raw transporting map, if I were to truly rank it just strictly for transporting, I probably would put it more as an A tier. Again, it kind of suffers from that weird situation where it's like the map's oddly kind of too big for people, so they just don't always see the helicopter and spawn into them. In terms of the Conquest version of Outskirts, the Conquest version of Outskirts, same thing. You do have the benefit of being able to kill people similarly, and you have cool drop-offs in certain locations. But the problem with Outskirts on Conquest is that there is just a lot of tanks and vehicles, so your chance of dying just goes up. It's still a very, very fun map for me because of the killing aspect. But if it was strictly transporting, I probably would move this down if it was just for transporting. River is a really good map. I really, really, really enjoy River. River for me on both Infantry Conquest and Conquest is really, really high up there. Infantry Conquest, or sorry, Conquest, maybe I would say is an A tier, maybe. But for me, I've just had really enjoyable games on River. River has one of the best drop off points. It's the super, super, super huge central buildings. What's up, Omash? So, I am a college professor in my classes. I have a question of the day. Question of the day today is what would be your Forget Me Not superpower, or like your Midas Touch, or your Monkey Paw power? In the X Men universe, there's a superhero whose name is Forget Me Not. He has the ability, he has the ability to be forgotten if you break eye contact with him. It's unfortunately kind of crappy because no one remembers him, no one knows who he is. So, Infantry Conquest on River, I would say, is pretty high up there. If I'm being a little critical or a smidge critical, maybe I would slide River down to an A for Conquest, just because it oddly is one of the easier maps to get shot out with the tanks. Tanks have these big hills that they can hide on top of. They can snipe you. They also, BTRs and stuff can sit in the water, so they have really, really weird angles where they can hit you from. Salhan, unfortunately, as it does not apply. There on Conquest, there is an attack heli, but then on Infantry Conquest, there is no transport heli. Literally, Salhan actually would probably be an S tier if it had a transport heli. It does not, though, so it is unfortunately not an S tier. Let me see. Put this one down here. Or we put this up here. Ability to think faster, but only when consuming more than a safe amount of caffeine. You have to be super hyped on caffeine. Sandy for Conquest is definitely pretty low for me. I should have probably made an F tier. Next time I do this, I'll have an F tier. Oh, I can barely see the sea. You travel through time but not space. How'd that work? So Conquest, Sandy, there's technically one Little Bird transport, and it's like way off in the bottom right-hand corner of the map. But it is a two-person bird, I believe, or four-person bird, so only a couple people can sit in it. So it's just not very good for transporting. And there's a bunch of Blackhawks and armed Little Birds on that map, so you're just kind of asking, you're like gonna probably die in that little news chopper. Personally, I have not really had a lot of fun experiences on Infantry Conquest either. I would probably actually legitimately say Sandy's probably going to stay at a D for me for Infantry Conquest. Yes, you do get the chopper, which is cool. But again, like I said, it does suffer from the problem of the map is too small, but like the overall map is too big. So literally, even if you're flying near the main part, most people are like zoomed in on just one or 2 points, so they just don't even see you. Earth moves through space, so you pop in the middle of space. Ooh, interesting. Interesting. That would probably suck a lot, especially the first time you used it and found out you probably died. So Sandy to me is pretty damn low ranking. Pensatown. Pensatown is a super dope map. If I'm being a smidge critical, I would put Infantry Conquest at an A, and I would put Normal Conquest at a, or sorry, put Infantry Conquest at an S, and I would put Normal Conquest at a A. The map just has some of the best points to drop off on. The map has very few elevation, so most people are on like ground floor of the street. So when you drop people on roofs, it's just a huge advantage that you get over people. And on top of that, there's just really cool points that you go to. Conquest just smidge lower because there's an attack heli. The skies are super clear, so it's really easy to get shot out. And on top of that, there's a lot of tanks and stuff, so they just easily shoot you out of the sky more consistently. So that's probably why I would slide it down a hair. Valley. For me, on Conquest, it's very low ranking because it's Valley again. There is technically Hmm. I think on Conquest it's a C. And then for Infantry Conquest, it's a very different map. It's like not even close to the same map. I'll explain in 1 second. So Conquest version, there's Blackhawks in base, and then there's a little bird spawn somewhere on your home base or like outside of your base. So it suffers from the negative consequences of like if you lose the point, you can just not have a bird for forever. But the thing that is the pros, if you do get the bird, it does have some really cool drop off points and really unique elevation. You can drop people off on top of the big nuclear silo. So there's some fun, interesting drops. But on Conquest, it does suffer from really, really heavy tanks. So maybe if I were thinking about it more, I might even put this in the D tier. Infantry Conquest, though, is really weirdly different. The map is like shrunk. It literally shrinks the map. So the map is just not as big as it normally is. And on top of that, no tanks. And on top of that, there's just a lot of unique, interesting points that you get to drop off on. And there's only one of the downsides is there's only one bird per side, but there's no attack birds, so you don't really have to deal with those. So it can be a really cool map on Infantry Conquest. Okay, Wakistan. We only have 1 or 2 left. There's no Kodak on this list. I just realized that. Kodak's. Oh, I skipped it because it was a tiny one. Okay. Wakistan. Personally, I'm not a big fan of Wakistan. Especially on Conquest. I'm leaderboard for one of the longest kills in the game. Ooh, nice. Congrats, Enchanted. That's badass. Conquest, there's one Blackhawk. So the one Blackhawk that you get is kind of a bummer. Infantry Conquest, you get a little bird, but the problem that Wakistan suffers from is there's a lot of people that run RPGs on the map, even if there's no vehicles, because of the way that people just clump on the bridges. So there's just a really high chance that you're probably going to get shot out of the sky, regardless of the vehicle that you're in. It's kind of cool because there are some more birds, and you can have some decently good games, and the bridges are really hectic. But like I said, the biggest problem that it suffers from is the fact that there is just so many people that are running RPGs abnormally on that map because of what I just said. The problem is Wakistan would be a fun map if it was like every once in a while, not every single other game. That's the biggest problem. Wine Paradise. So Wine Paradise actually has a little bird that will spawn inside if it's Conquest or Infantry Conquest. Wine Paradise does kind of suffer from the fact that it's a little too big. Like it's a little too big of a map where people won't really spawn on it. Wine also has a ton of tanks. So there's a lot of tanks that are on the Conquest version. So there's just a lot of vehicles. Can be fun for RPG heliing, but at the same time, a lot of people don't see your heli, don't spawn into it. A lot of people are clumped and condensed on Charlie, which sometimes can be good. It's really easy to drop people off on Delta, which is like the huge bridge. But the biggest problem is, like I said, the fact that on Conquest there's just a lot of tanks, so they usually shoot you down. The map's really big, so people usually don't spawn in your heli, and the place to repair yourself is super far away. So to repair yourself, you don't have a mechanic. You have to go really far home to heal. So Infantry Conquest can be kind of more fun because you take away a lot of that tank pressure. But again, it's still really, really big. So if you get hurt, it's just super. It is. I haven't really timed out how long it takes to return home to repair, but I would not be shocked if Wine is one of the longest, if not the longest, to get home. It is a really long flight to get there. So while it can be fun, it is held back a little bit by the fact that it's just you can just spawn in there and not really get anywhere. Okay, Zalfi Bay. Let me see. Trying to make it bigger. It's not working. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna do this. This is the D tier. Let's continue. Zalfi Bay for me is pretty low ranking. Zalfi Bay on Conquest does have a little bird helicopter. And there's only one map that has Z, so I'm gonna just write Z. So there is one little bird that spawns on the Conquest version, but at the same time, the map is super wide, and again, super struggles from the fact that people don't spawn into it. I would feel like the Infantry Conquest version should be more fun, but again, it's still literally people just never spawn the helicopter. Picking up people is almost impossible on the Infantry Conquest version because everything's super condensed. On the normal Conquest version, there's just so many tanks, so many boats that shoot you down. It's just really hard to go pick up people. Even though you do get a bird, it's just really, really difficult. And then one that we don't have yet is Kodak. Kodak, because the picture wasn't there. Kodak, for me, Kodiak, or however people call it, I don't know how you technically say it. Kodiak, for me, I would probably say is pretty high up there on pretty damn good maps. For Conquest, I may put it in a B tier, just because it also is a map that has a lot of tanks. There also are Blackhawks and stuff, so there's a lot of obstacles or things that can kind of get in your way sometimes. But it still can be a really, really fun map. And it can be really, really fun because Charlie, which is like the huge building, is a really popular place. There's silos of, I think it's Echo. So there's like a little town almost, and there's like some silos you can drop people off on. So there's it just is a cool map for some of the places. I think I got all of the maps. Took a hot minute, but it's okay. I always underestimate my time. But yeah, that's how, at least right now, I would probably rank the maps. I know a lot of them are in the D tier, but to me, a lot of maps kind of feel very similar, where I'm very, like, for the ones that are in the top of the list, I'm like stupid excited when I see them. I'm like, oh my gosh. But for the ones like in the D tier, a lot of them feel very similar, feel the same to me, in terms of like having quote unquote fun on the maps. But yeah, that's my little tier list. I know it took a second, but that'll be good to have and do because people have asked me before, and I always said I would, but I never got around to it. So I wanted to just get around to doing that real quick.